computer. Screen. Actually, quick before I share my screen, Sergio, you said I had a bug. Do you want to share it quick with the class?
Sure.
So you can get the whole class to help out with it.
Did you bring enough bugs to share with the whole class, Sergio?
I brought enough bugs. Might be a small bug. We can all share it. Okay. Sorry, sound effects. Share the screen. Oh God, everything is huge. Everything is huge. Well, it's 2 errors here. It was 7 initially because I tried to. Well, let me go back to the basic one here. I can't run my program. I don't understand this error message right here. It's back to the beans, man. Error creating bean with name request mapping.
No.
Hold on. Just I guess further to the right is the actual explanation.
Oh, right there, keep going. It's almost there. Cannot map what? User controller method. So let's take a look at the.
I was a little confused by that because I have a user controller, but it's not a method. It's a
class.
It's a class, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. But
so
it still technically has a constructor because remember, a class has a user controller method. So, but it's fine by that. You don't need to fully understand how that's working, but what it is it's having trouble figuring this item out.
okay.
So let's take a look at it quick and make sure it actually makes sense. So we got the cross origin, REST controller, good, request mapping users. We're trying to auto wire the user repository and the exercise repository, which I do see over there. I see a user repository in the exercise repository. Good.
So right now I only have list all users, and then I have
So what's interesting though is that even though you're using the user repository, it looks gray. Why? Line 19, user repository is still all grayed out. You double click on it? Not that one, that one, yeah. And see it's used down on line 38, but that could just be your IntelliJ.
It's just here, here, and here. 3 locations.
Yeah, that could just be IntelliJ, I guess.
So
It's just
you look
theme.
up the, go ahead, John.
Was just this theme just makes the color look like
Could
it's
be,
gray.
yeah.
you know what?
So I'm saying it's not a guarantee, but it's just something that's interesting it so far. I do see you're not using the exercise repository yet, are you?
Not yet.
Then kill that. Don't include it unless you're ready to use it,
Okay.
or at least comment it out. Because it could be trying, it might be failing that too. So we're just gonna comment that out for the moment. Can I take a look at the user repository though?
Sure thing.
Cool. Got user long, good. And then the user entity.
Yes,
Where is the underscore user controller method?
Don't worry about that. That is most likely something that is in the JPA or IntelliJ Spring Boot.
Well, I'm just saying he's using user, and I'm wondering if user's getting confused by the word because it's might be a word.
Could be.
I'm guessing at that because user is a
Maybe.
Maybe.
I haven't included a lot of annotations yet because this is still very bare bones. As I develop it more, I guess I'll need to use this.
And I probably should have said this earlier, like for our system, if we don't use the user class from Spring Security, we'll most likely create what's called an auth class, actually, not user. So
I use user in my project and I don't have a problem with
works.
it.
Okay.
Okay.
I just like the auth class, but it's fine to use user as well. So if I just haven't tested it with Java, so I'm familiar knowing that auth works. So yeah, so if you say user works, then we're good with that. So you can keep it then. All right,
I was thinking about that. I was like, I wonder if the fact that I'm using the word user in this, I hope it's not a keyword or anything like that.
I use user in my project too.
Okay, very good. Are you using Spring Security, either one of you?
Oh yeah, I'm using Spring Security.
Okay, good. So I know Spring Security has a user class, but I don't know. So I was just concerned, but if that's fine, then we're good. So yeah, let's see.
Are you using Spring Security or you're not?
Not yet, not here yet, not his yet.
Oh, okay.
I was just hoping for later, and that's fine though. But yeah, it is under different packages, so they shouldn't conflict, but I hadn't tested it yet. So let's see. ID, generated value, long ID, string name, long age, long weight, activity level, fine. Structure looks fine. Structure looks fine. You got all the other items, good. For the fun of it, just reboot again. now that we took out the other repository? So let's see.
So let's go here, right?
All right, yeah, go there, scroll up.
And then we're gonna go to the error message, which
Yep.
is the way up, all the way up here.
Can you do me a favor here? Make this window smaller. I don't care about that window. So now we can actually scroll down from here because I want to see where in your code it's trying to connect to it.
Sorry,
So
I'm trying to get rid of the chat thing. Okay, so scroll down.
It uses.
but only a little bit. Hold on.
Control B method.
There's already a user controller bean method. User controller method.
To get users.
Oh, go to the user controller for a second.
Could it be this?
No. Scroll down. Get one user, create user, get users, get one user. Hold on.
Path variable ID, there's
Dude,
no
get
path variable.
mappings.
What's that?
Path variable ID, there's no path on the get
Yeah.
mapping.
Oh,
Yeah. There's two
Where?
without.
Yeah, there's two, 34.
line
and
34.
Oh, yep, he's
24
right.
and
They're
34 are
conflicting. These two are conflicting.
Hmm.
They're the same route. So
Oh,
this
Jesus
route
Christ.
is identical to this route. That's it. Nice job, Freddie, and I think Jim got it too.
After Freddie said it, I was like, yep, I know exactly like. what
Nice
he's
catch,
saying
Freddie.
now.
Yep,
So Freddie actually. got
I
it.
meant to put that too, and
Yep.
I forgot.
but that'll do it. So now you guys know what that error message means.
So when it's referencing bean and beans, what is that specifically?
So Spring has something called beans. We haven't really talked about it much yet. Feel free to definitely look it up at some point. I might try to talk about it as well.
Okay.
But all these little things that are being created and utilized by JPA Web and stuff like that, by Spring Web and JPA Security and JPA, these are beans. So they're
Okay.
elements, entities in the system. That's the main thing to keep in mind. Is they're all entities and all things. And remember how we said that we could on each of these, the user controller could have an at component as well. So user controller, the repository, the entities, all of those could have an at component. They're all components, so they're also beans in other words. So these are just individual beans. Is kind of the concept is Java coffee. And you need a whole bunch of beans to
Oh,
make
there
a
it
pot
is.
of coffee. Yeah,
Got it.
you need
Okay.
a bunch of beans to make a coffee. So your Java project is full of beans,
Yes.
Java
so
beans.
I believe there's, and I've seen this in some of those configuration files, and so I know that there's like an at bean, and that will
There is.
generate a new bean, and then you can generate something off that. So when Java goes
Yeah.
through it, says, "Oh, it's a new bean." Okay, we can. How we work with this?
Yep.
I've never created one, and I don't know how to do it, but I just know
Yeah.
it exists.
Nice. No grinding the beans. That's what Spring does technically. Spring will grind the beans into your coffee whenever you build it. But it needs valid beans in order to grind them. So if it finds something that's not a bean, it's like, I can't grind this. And it yells at you.
Okay.
Can't make
All right.
coffee out of a nut. I need beans. So good. So yeah, there we go. Again, the best thing for this is just to help people see these error messages to help give an idea of where to look. All
Yeah,
right, can stop sharing your screen if you want.
I am done for now.
Awesome. Yep, no worries. If you have more errors, let us know. Because again, that is something that, as far as when you look at that file, it looks fine. So you were just glossing over that file because that did not to be what the issue is. You could have been looking at that for hours and not seen that because as far as you're concerned, it looks fine. It just sometimes you need a second pair of eyes to just be like, oh, wait a minute, something's missing. So again, good catch, Freddie. Nice. All right. Anyone else having any sort of major problems before we move forward?
Me.
The program not running. If we can at least do an hour's worth of code, I might be able to help you a little bit after.
No,
Get
it's
you a
all
little more
right, it's
help.
all
All right. We also the first tomorrow during the first hour, I might drop into you to help you out a little bit first before I start working with some of the projects. So I'll have some project time too. So I can drop into the room with you and Sergio and stuff in the beginning during the first half an hour to do some help. So let me know if you still need some.
Forgot to fill the
All right.
attendance.
I don't think I mentioned it when you were here. So yeah, if everyone forgot the form, please go fill it out now.
Yeah,
I
I'm
forgot
doing it
meant
right
to
now.
mention it when everyone got in. So yeah, don't forget that form. You don't want that missed 5-day email. That false email. So you don't want that happening again. All right, so we'll do that. Go ahead and share my screen. Right. So the fortunate thing is we still got a good amount of things to do here before we'll actually have anything to run. So that's why I want to make sure we get back into it. I just got to pull up the notes again to make sure we follow because there's a good amount of things going on. Where'd you go? All right. So to review everything we have currently with our authentication system, to kind of cover on what we built so far. So we built our Java token utility. This is the system that will generate tokens and also decrypt our tokens. So it's going to create our tokens and pull them apart. So we'll be able to add data to it, encrypt that data, but at the same time also be able to undecrypt that data and pull the specific information we want out of it. So we have that first. We then have our service that currently we're using right now just to kind of send a hard-coded person in. So we have this hard-coded user that we're sending back until we connect it to our a user database or some user table. So we only have one user called Java in use that has a password of password. That's currently what we're using for the moment. Eventually, we're going to convert this to using our user repo and actually pulling from our database, the actual users. It's going to search the user database, find the user, and send that back to be then compared against Spring Auth. So Spring Security will then compare the password gotten in the request against the password in the database. All right. So at some point, this will change. For the moment, we're going to use this in-memory system so we can have an idea of what's happening. The next thing we started to try to create was our controller because I wanted to try to test this. But then I remembered we also need a little more with this. We need a way of accepting data. We don't have a user object or class or anything like that. And so we're also going to create our bodies. And so these are interesting items. You can have, so under models, add a new item, new package, like bodies. And so none of these are entities. These are custom request bodies and response bodies that we are going to be able to send in and out. So we'll be able to accept request bodies, and we'll be able to send back response bodies. And we'll be able to put custom information in these that don't correlate to an entity object, that don't have a database object. So our first example of that, I'm going to call it, let's do a JWT request. You might also just call this auth request or login request or whatever like that. But this is going to be, we can use this technically for both creating an account and logging in. So we'll call it JWT request for the moment. It'll be a class. Name and private. First, since now we're going to be using this with our JSON system. So because of that, we do need the default constructor in order for Jackson to work with it. So the default constructor, if I remember correctly, isn't needed for JPA. It's needed for the JSON system. So just be aware of that. That's why you can technically save things to the database and recover things in the database without the constructors. We'll go ahead and do generate. We'll do our constructor. We're going to have a none constructor first, and then we'll create our other constructor that has both items because that's the constructor that's used when we send data to us from Postman. This is the constructor that's used for that. So generate constructor, all of them. And so this is the constructor that our request system uses. So it's going to use this to be able to set these items by default. And of course, we'll just add our setters and getters. So for all intents and purposes, this is identical pretty much to a entity, just we don't use any of the entity annotation. It looks just like a object from before we got into this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what's really nice about these body items. These body objects is that they are just simple Java objects. We can specify how we want data. We can have multiple versions of these. And again, these can be interfaces and child classes. So you can have several variations of it. And so you can do all that kind of stuff as well. So all of that can still apply. And so if you want to make sure you have several different variations of a incoming request where they can include certain things and exclude certain things, you can use all sorts of those inheritance systems to do that. So these can be a lot more you can play around with these a lot more to set these up. And this is another way also that you can streamline some of the data you get from your objects, from your SQL polls. Keep in mind, by doing it this way, you're going to run into some more heavy processing power because you'll need to iterate through the list of items you have and then map them to this object. Because unless they're somehow connected through some sort of inheritance. So unless they're connected to some sort of inheritance or interface of some kind, connecting these two items easily is going to be more difficult.
You could actually, this also you can use, I just know a little bit about this, but you can use the dot class on this because it's a class, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Hmm.
All classes have dot class. Yep.
But isn't like dot class, you can like iterate, isn't it like it would just go through, I don't know. I was just thinking.
Not sure what your goal is, but yeah.
I kind of lost my train of thought.
No worries.
As you were talking about iterating and stuff, I was just like, oh.
It's all good. And then the second item we're going to do is we also want to be able to send back a token, right? We want to be able to send back to our system a token for authentication. So we're also going to do another class, JWT response. It's simply going to have a private final JWT. They always do it like this. Small. And this was not part of the response system. We just need the standard, the simple constructor of the one object. So we're never going to be accepting this from a input. So we're going to be able to just do the standard constructor. We don't need the default for this one. Here is a getter. You don't need a setter for this one technically, because again, we're never going to be changing this value because again, it's final. So we can't even do a setter even if we wanted it. So we can't do a setter here. So some of you be like, well, why not the setter? Well, we can't put a setter here because it's final. Remember, you can't change a final item once it's set by the constructor. So no setter here, not for anything from Jackson, from JSON systems, or from JPA or Spring Boot, doesn't matter. Final means it can't exist. Simple enough. See a chat, anything I can see? Oh, Richard needs to reboot. All right, I'll keep an eye to see anything back. Good. Close that down now. So these are the two items we needed to finish off our controller. Okay. At least some of it. All right. We do need another item, but we're going to cover that in a second. All right, so back to our controller. Got our post mapping / authenticate. I'm going to do the JWT request because it's the request body. Why not?
We need to give it a name, don't we? That's just the data type.
That is
Oh,
working
right.
on mine.
No, he's right. You forgot the data type, which is going to be, what do you want to call this one? I'm thinking. This is auth request, I guess. That's fine. That's fine. Go. Then for the rest of this, this is the post. And this is going to do what we're going to do actually this one again. This is where it's hard to do this because there's multiple methods. As we need to authenticate the token. And how we authenticate the request, or we need to authenticate the request, authenticate auth request. And how we do that might change. So we might want to put this authenticate process in another method. So I'm going to do that for a second. And what we need to authenticate is a string username, a string password. So, and the reason why we separate this is because no matter what we do, no matter what authentication system we use, we're always going to authenticate with a name and a password, right? No matter what we use, whether it's JWT, whether it's OAuth, whether it's bearer tokens, no matter what system we use, it's always going to involve some sort of username and password, right? Because that's why we're going to extract this out of here in case we decide to switch from an authentication token system to something else. We can still use the same method here, potentially. And now I'm going to use a try catch. So if this thing fails, we want to kick it back. So I'm going to use the first, let's see, the authentication manager we brought in. That had that authentication method. So reminder, I didn't actually bring that back up again, did I? Remind us about that item. Where did we create that again? Where did the manager exist? I don't remember where I put that. Wait, no, we didn't actually create that, right? That came from Spring Security, right? So Spring Security has something called authenticate. How you utilize this is you create an instance of a new username, password, authentication token. So they have other items. So anonymous authentication token is do we allow for technically guests that are tracked. So they log in as a guest, for example. And there are others. There's other ways to authenticate that they have. We're not going to touch base on them, but just know that Spring Security has multiple different ways of authenticating. They have OAuth and all that. So this is going to use username, password, authentication token. I'm going to provide the username. Yeah, a lot of this you're pretty much just going to be copy, almost pasting from what I have, or not really copy, but reusing a lot of this. So a lot of it is the same. So there's two catches we want to catch. One is the disabled, and this is just because it does do this. We're not actually going to have disabled in our system, but this is, I believe, what you need in case of is that a disabled user or an inactive user. And this is something, again, that Spring Security has. So just you want this there, even if you might never hit it. So. Exception. User disabled. And because we do this, and I didn't add this because my notes said it, because we do throw an exception, we do need to add to our method here, throws exception. All right. Good.
Mhm.
All right. Because we didn't have any sort of post mapping or response entities or anything like that, that automatically includes a throw. That's why when we do our, if we go back, for example, to our developer controller, I think it was, we had it. I don't know why I did like that. I double clicked on it for some reason. We have this LX throw here. We don't need this item to have a throw exception because our get mapping includes that. When we include the get mapping, that annotation will add in the expectation that this might throw an exception. All right. It's also not a recognized exception, and it's using a method part of JPA. So JPA, this or else throw, has a throws system in there. See, so extends throwable and throws X. So all those things include that. That's why your variable here doesn't need it, because this is just a standard method that isn't have to have any annotations, is using any other methods. We're just using the throw command here on our own in the middle of the code. We need this throws exception just to let Java know, hey, this thing will throw. Just be aware of that. The other catch we want to have, and this is what we care more about, add credentials exception. Do the same thing though. Throw exception valid. So what you do here. So the authentication manager will run its authentication method using the username and password it has. If the user is disabled, which again, we're not utilizing that system, but just what am I trying to clarify? Java Spring Security requires this. So even if you don't disable user accounts or anything, you have to include this because that is something that Spring Security has. So if you don't include this, you're most likely going to get a warning, usually. Whereas when we care about is this bad credentials exception. This is, yeah, the username was invalid or the password is invalid. They couldn't find the user, whatever. All right. With this now, what we're going to do in our create authentication token, we're going to first authenticate. Nope.
Does that private don't return anything? Oh, it's a void. Okay.
Yep. Authenticate.
Yep.
Auth request. Username. Auth request get password. Now we see here it's yelling at us, and why? Well, again, we get that unhandled exception, Java lang exception. So this method throws, and when a throw occurs, it throws back to the previous method, which means that either this needs to handle that exception, or we have to let this method know that it needs to throw as well, and so that it will then just rethrow. And so what we're going to do here is we're just going to tell it, hey, I also throw exception. And so what that does is means that if this throws it, because I'm not catching it, I'm going to then again throw it up even farther. So I'm going to throw it up as well, which sounds fun to say I'm going to throw up. But it's going to continue to throw up the chain, which sounds just as a great visual image if you think about it. Don't think about it. Throw up the chain. There you go. But yeah, if this passes, we know that the username and password's fine, and we can at least move forward with this. We know that the username and password is good to go. And so in this case, we're going to do a final user details. And I'm going to use the user detail service to pull this user. So load user by username, auth request.get username. Least final string token is JWT token utility generate token. And to generate the token, we just need that user details, right? Which we now have. So user details. So now we have a token. So now we're good to return. Entity. Okay, and this is a new one I wanted to showcase. And so this is something you can now use with this response entity question mark. There are other versions. We can do okay, created, accepted. So I actually found these nice simpler ones for response entity, by the way. So instead of doing new response entity and then include the object, comma, and then the status, they actually have status methods. So I'm like, this is nice. So instead of doing this, response entity, what is it? New JWT response, not request, response token, HTTP status. Okay, instead of doing this, we can do instead, oops, my hands are on the right spot of the keyboard. Return, we can use a static method out of the response entity class. Okay, so we get the HTTP status okay built in, and now we just need to include a body, so a T. And so we can do new response, JWT response object with our token. A little nicer, huh? It's a nice, syntax sugar right there for you. It's nice, useful methods. So instead of doing the new response entity body, comma, status, you can just do response entity dot status and then the body. It's a lot nicer. Introduce you guys to that because I find I'm going to be using this from moving forward. Trust me. So I found this was a lot nicer. So just to kind of showcase that, in case you guys want to do this, go back to developer controller for a second. And we got this, where is it? This one created right here. I want to do, I'm going to show the new version of it. Response entity dot created, repository dot save, developer. That'd be the newer version of it, which
No.
should be it. Oh, right, I need to. Okay. Right, no. Okay. That should be fine. I type URI developer. Yeah, I'll look a little more into that. That should work, but I picked a random one to check on. I'll double check on those, but yeah. These are nice. I gotta look more into them now because that should
I know
work.
the new one would probably work.
I'll say dot created. That should work. What dot new?
No, the one in the developer, the one you were looking at before. Not that one, but the one above it. If you do the get one with the new, oh, is there a new response on that? Oh,
No.
looks like because you have to generate a new one to get the okay.
Well, I did run a new here too.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, it should work, but I'm not gonna do with it now. Not important. But it's something you can look into. But if you're also not comfortable with those, just use the ones we've been using. It's fine. Just know that these methods do exist, which could be nice. Anyway, not important. What we care about is we get our token. So we got our token, we got the JWT response token, we got that. So again, to clarify what's happening again. So we come into this response entity, we're getting in a JSON web token request, which includes a username and password. We send it to the authentication method and we extract the username and password. That way we aren't really bound by this system. We want to get username and password through any other method or any other medium, we can. So we have our authenticate system here, username and password, those exception. We use the authentication manager and use a method known as authenticate. And we also use this item called the username password authentication token, username and password. So we send the username and password, it authenticates the username and password against what it has in its system. This is either yes or no. Disabled or bad. If it doesn't throw these, so as soon as it throws, it's going to go to this line doesn't catch, so this will throw as well, and that's going to go out of this method, and that will return from this method. This method will end on this line. If this line doesn't crash, we know that the username and password was valid for that username. So we can go ahead and pull the user details from our user detail service. I'm going to go ahead and create a token and return with the response entity. Okay. Almost to a point to test. I think that you will at least send in a login, I think. Should we send in a login? And in case anyone was wondering, just again to confirm, in case anyone was wondering though, where it gets the username and password, because we aren't like, where is this being stored or anything like that? Authentication manager, all that kind of stuff. We go to the detail service. Remember, we implement a user detail service, and that's why Spring Security can recognize this item, and I believe it does use this to then validate. that. So let's test that. The program, run button. Run button go. Says it's running. Oh, there it is, run down there. Yep, stop and run. Oh, wait. So did it crash? No, it didn't. It hasn't started yet. Now the question to see if I followed my notes correctly.
Ooh.
Okay, good, because I'm getting the same thing.
Do we have to actually create the application? Did I miss that lower in my notes? Manager yet. So many different items. I didn't create a manager, did I? Create a web security configure adapter. JWT authentication entry point. That's perfect request filter. Then something for service until. All right. I actually didn't stop in the middle here with my when I did it myself with the lessons I followed. So I'm going to keep going. I don't actually make a manager. So. Let's go ahead and continue creating pieces. 'Cause one of these items will make the manager happy, apparently. And this will be actually good to well, maybe we won't figure out which one it is, but one of these will do it. So we have what we need technically. That's why Illinois is not letting us work, because we should be able to at least log in or at least create the information to get a token. The next couple methods we're going to create are for those things to authenticate the person. So that's the next couple items we're making. The first thing we need to make is a filter that's going to extract the header from the request. So whenever we're going to provide, so we'll go back to Postman for a second, which I had open, but I apparently closed it apparently. Of course I did. Oh no, there it is. I have it open over here. There we are. That says Amazon. Why? Whatever. Anyway. So go to authorization. We have this bearer token. I put in a, what we got to do, sorry. Error. Something like that. That's what a bearer token kind of looks like. This is actually going to add a token. Oh, I actually need to put the word bearer there. When you put the token, a token in for the bearer that go through the bearer token authentication process, what you're going to get authorization, bearer, token. That's how it comes in naturally.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that can be annoying with this is, again, JWT does not want the bearer key phrase, does it?
Mm-hmm.
Nope. And so we use this header. We're going to have to extract from this the bearer keyword and get the substring from here. It's not that difficult. You do substring 7 because it's 6 characters. We want the 7th character on. So it's not a difficult item to do. We can also use our own header if we want to, and we don't have to use the authorization key if we don't want to. We can use our own key if we want to as well. But I think for the tutorial, to keep it simple, you might just use the authorization system, just that way you can use this. You just paste your key here and be fine. So for the moment, we're going to use that. I might do a extra little addition at the end of the video when some of you guys maybe leave or something. I'll show how to pull from a different header if you want. But let's use the built-in system for now. Oops. So this is not a model or controller. I'm going to actually put this under the utilities because this is another utility. I'll put this in there, but I'm going to call it the JWT. Test. You could also make another package called filters if you wanted to, but we're getting a lot of packages, so yeah, don't really care too much about that. What we want to do is this is a filter that we want to occur once per request. Every time a request comes in, we only want to run this filter on that request once. All right. And so what these items do, these filters, they will run before any of the logic in a route occurs. This is a filter on the, as the request comes in, it's going to run this filter on that request before it hits any routes. Or sorry, before it hits the logic of the route. Will only run on certain routes, I believe, that we can set up. But it only runs once, at least if you put this on it, once per request filter. For this to work, you need to import our auto wire, JWT, user detail service. We're also going to need the token util. So auto wire again. These two for this filter. So I'm going to pull the token out and extract the information from it. So because of the once per user filter, we have, as you can see, there is a method we haven't included yet. Do an @override to make sure we do it right. And it's very, I personally say it's important to do overrides on methods that you yourself have not created. If you're overriding a method that you yourself have not created, I like having the override tagged so that way if I did something wrong, it'll let me know. Because I'm now overriding a method that is not mine, right? So if I do it wrong, I want to know. The item we're overriding is a protected void do filter. Data's the items is the HTTP servlet. Don't worry too much about these items. These are just built in.
Okay.
Request. Yeah.
Let's write a servlet.
Servlet request. Sorry. We're not getting into servlets. It's just the terminology for it. So
Sounds like a
this is-
Pokemon.
this is network terminology. So if you get into networking, you'll learn about servlets.
I had to learn the servlets when I started doing Spring Boot because I needed to know like that kind of stuff in the beginning.
Oh, geez. Yeah, we don't
You
need
don't
to know
really need
those.
to know them now.
No, we don't.
Thank God.
Yep. And we also going to do the HTTP servlet response as well. So we're looking a little more underneath the hood. Every single route has this request and response object in it. So whenever you have that path variable and that body variable, it's pulling it from the HTTP service request. That data comes from the servlet request, and this is getting passed around through. This concept of request response, or REC-RES, as anyone who worked with Node and Express with me, recognize this concept of REC-RES, and then last item, filter chain. And so anybody, which is a little unfortunate, none of you guys here worked with Node and Express, because this 3 method or 3 parameter item actually might feel a little familiar to you. Class, please. Anyone who did Node, so for those of you who did Node, we'll go to 11, we'll get a little bit of an advantage on this. REC-RES next, remember that?
Yep. That's what chain is next.
Yep, the filtered chain. Remember, the next is just the next item in the chain to the route, remember?
Yep.
So I don't know, Richard, Emilio, Jeremy, any of you guys remember that stuff?
Vaguely.
Yeah, right, REC-RES
Yeah.
next. So that's where you're gonna see a little similarity there. So what happens is that you can do multiple filters before you hit the route. Multiple filters are happening in the background that you don't see. That's why we can extend it. We have to override it. So you're just saying that we want to add this filter to the filter chain, request, response, chain. So, and that way we can edit the response before we send it. So that's something you don't know. That's something, one thing you don't realize is happening right now. As soon as a request hits Java, hits your Java server system, it already has a response ready to go. It builds a response object, and that your logic then just adds to. And when you return from your logic route, it then returns that response object. It adds what you return to the response object and then sends that response object out. So this item exists as soon as a request is given. And so we're just passing this through, and we can make changes to the response. We can also edit the request as well from here so that we can change how the request is before we even hit the route. We're not going to get that deep into that, so don't worry so much about it. But just be aware that is something we can do. There's a lot of power that we're just scratching the surface of. There's so much you can do with this stuff. So the items we care about though. Yet. We're just gonna put these in because I think these are required for it, because if I just do it like this, it's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna follow the override yet. So throws, this will have a throw of servlet exception. And an IO exception. You can throw one of those. Part of the override. I actually don't think we're gonna do any of those ourselves. I can't remember if the code has it. Forgive me for not memorizing this code. That's a good amount of code if you haven't figured it out yet. So, first thing first, we're going to pull that JWT token. So, JWT token. Oh, wait, not yet. Actually, we're going to make some variables for it. So, string. What we're trying to get out of our. So, what are we trying to get out of this process? Actually, another thing about it.
Trying to get. This is where we're parsing the token part, what was it? The bearer out of the token, right?
We'll get the token, and then what can we get when we have the token? What data is the token encrypting?
The user?
Username, right? It doesn't have the whole user, just the username, right?
Okay. Yeah, username.
Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get both the username and the token. So
Okay.
To prove that Matt was right, there's three things we're going to use here. So final, string, request, token, header, string, username, string. Yeah, we're going to put token first, but JWT token, we're going to say, just so you guys have that specificness. Even though JWT token stands for JSON Web Token, but whatever. That's how we usually refer to it, JWT token. So we don't call it JW token.
Okay.
So these are the three things we're trying to get. To get the request token header, we're just going to go to the request object of equal. Let's do that. We'll do get header. So right here, this is how you get the headers. Very simple. I'm going to show the bearer system so that you can use that in there. But if you wanted to, you can put it in. All you do here is you put the name of the token, of the header. So if we wanted to use our own header, we could do geeky off if we wanted to. And if we did geek likes off, that just means in Postman under headers, we would do right here off and add the token here.
Got it. In this case,
that's how we do that. We're actually going to uncheck that though. In this case, we're going to use the authorization header, which is capital authorization. All right.
Mhm.
Now, part of the reason we do that though as well, yeah, no, never mind. Yeah, that's what we want. Okay, that. String username, we're gonna set that to null first, because if that stays null, we have a problem. Same with token. If this stays null, we have a problem. Make sense? So initialize these to null because if they stay null, something didn't work. Yeah, I'll move that semicolon. So again, and this just a reminder, if using header, error, do that around curly brackets that you know it's error, and then brackets token. Move. Wait, it's there for you guys if you do look at my code later. Sound good? Using header. And that's kind of why I tend to use my own token, but I want you guys to at least see Bearer because I at least am familiar with Bearer. I used it for a couple of my projects until I realized I didn't need to use it and I could use my own token, my own header. So I'm forcing you guys to use it for a little bit, but if you want to for your own personal project, so for this project and Expression, go with Bearer token. But for your personal project, if you want to use your own header, go for it. All right. But you do want to be familiar with Bearer tokens. So what's that?
So old school.
It is. That's why I'm like, yeah, but and I didn't really want to cover it again. Like, I have to.
I was saying use your old, it's kind of old school too, because just for
First things first, we got to think about the potential situations we can run into. What's the first potential situation with this token header? With any request that comes in? Are we guaranteed a token?
No.
No. Are we even guaranteed that the token we're given is going to actually be a bearer token?
No.
no.
So let's do a simple check. So if request token header is not equal to null, and our request token header starts with a nice little string method error with, I think I'll include the space there. Yeah, error space. So if this is true, so if it's not null and we do have that bearer space and we know we have a valid token, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to use a cool tool called logger.warn. So this is kind of like a console type thing, but we're just going to use the logger instead. This is something built into Spring Web. So we'll use that instead of console.log. We're going to use logger instead. Token. Token. Not begin. String. It could also be null, but main thing is it's not a bearer token. Even if this is the thing that triggers it, we don't care. It's not a bearer token, bearer string. That's all. And that's string. All right. Now, part of you might be wondering why I'm not doing an if return, because we're not going to return. That's not the point here. We actually need to do at the very end of all of this, we have to do chain dot. If we don't return a response, though, return a response, great. But otherwise, we have to do filter request response. And this, for again, those who remember node, this is kind of just doing next parenthesis. This is just saying, hey, go on to the next item, the next filter in the chain. Here's the request and response object as they are right now. So I can modify, if I modified them, fine, but here they are as they are right now. We'll go on to the next filter in the chain. That's why we're not doing any sort of if returns. We're never going to return. The only thing we'll do is exceptions or something like that. Or, yeah. Now though, we're going to do this here. Now we got here. So now we know we have a request to occur head in that has the bearer string. We now want to shrink that into our actual token. So token is going to be equal to request token header dot substring 7. This says start on that index. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are skipped. Index 7 is where we start, and that's the start of our token. And because we don't give it a second index, it's going to go on to the end. Substring is start, comma, end. If you don't give it an end, it goes on until the end of the string. So it's actually not that difficult to eliminate the first couple characters of a string if you know what that string is. Pretty straightforward, right? Not too difficult. Cool. That gets our token, and now we're going to go ahead and try to decrypt that token. Now we have to see, is this a valid token? So we'll try. Their name equals. How do we? So, anyone remember the method we can use for this? Or what we need to do for this? Anyone want to take a guess? Take a look at what we use here. Let's go. Stuff's gonna be difficult. See if there's anything logical that makes sense. And feel free to check a method to see if there's a method in there that makes sense. So trying to get the username. What classes might we use? Remember, it has to be something that already exists. So you can look above this line to see what we might be able to use.
Is it the user detail service?
Yeah, 50-50 shot, it's not in there. So it is the JSON token, JWT token utility. We use JWT user detail service. We use dot. There's nothing in here to get a name, get a username, is there?
Oh, okay.
And so if you check that method, JWT,
JWT request.
not request, we don't have that here.
Oh,
Wait, do
all
we?
right.
Yeah, there's no JWT request. No, we don't have that variable yet.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't bring that in. Good guess to try to bring it in, but we didn't bring that in. What we need is already here. So it's not JSON user detail service. What else could we, what other options do we have? Say it.
JW token.
The
Or P
token?
token.
Well, can we pull the username from this?
Oh,
No, this is just a token. We need to do something with the token. If we need to manipulate the token, is there anything here that sounds like it's a manipulator of a token?
JWT token util.
Ah, right. This kind of manipulates tokens, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Does this have a username getting kind of method?
Get username from token.
Ah, there it is. Still, it has like spelled the variable, not the method, not the class. That dot util. There we go. Get username from token. We just provide it JWT token. And if you remember correctly, if you look at it, just before we finish that off, token. JWT token. If we go back to that method for a quick second, so go to the JWT token util. When we look at this again, we do the get claim from token. Look at these, that looks fine. We do this claim resolver to apply get all claims from token. Do the JWT get parser, get key, parse claims JWT, get body. And unfortunately, it doesn't show the exception, does it? Yeah, there it is. So this has the ability to throw tokens, throw exceptions. So go here. The try catch we need here, there's two catches we need to be able to catch for. First one is going to be an illegal argument exception. And so that means what we sent isn't actually a JWT token. So if what we sent isn't actually a token, that's what we're going to get here. Because yeah, we could always have someone who, again, is trying to be a hacker, puts bearer space, and then puts some random bits of string there. That's not a token. So we look at it, we try to extract it. It has invalid characters or something, or it's in a bad format. It's not a valid token. That's when this is going to trigger. So again, in this kind of system, instead of using the logger, we don't want to warn. We actually want to print to the actual console this time. So this time we will use system.out print line. So this is when we want something to really be explicit. This is more for later on, like it's going to add it to file. So this, I'm pretty confident this won't showcase here. This is going to add to a logger file in your production environment. So you have that persistent. This is temporary. This is persistent. So print line table to get JWT token. Expression is saying, again, you don't want to give them too specifically what the problem is. You want to tell them like invalid JWT token. Just say you're unable to get it. It's not valid. It's good enough. Other one we need though, and again, this one we only need for some of you guys who decide they want to put expiration in there. So if you guys decide to put expiration in your system, we're able to catch the expired JWT exception. So for this project, we could comment this one out because we're not doing expiration. We're still going to include it anyway. So you guys have it for your program in case you decide to include expirations. All right. So far, so good.
Mhm.
All right. So after we do this, this is now pulling the usernames. The goal is by this line, we should have the username or what?
For the token?
Well, should be one of two things. One of two values. Either, what are the values?
True or false?
Well, one, it's not a Boolean, so that's not going to work. Username's a string.
Isn't it essentially a pass or fail though?
Kind of, again, what if it passes, what does it contain? If it fails, what does it contain?
Was it
Oh.
string or null?
String or null, the username, the actual username that we want, or it will continue to contain null, right? If this fails, one of these two catches are going to trigger, and so this assignment will never happen, and so it's going to keep its original condition of null. And so we only want to do the next part if we actually have a username. So if the name is not equal to null. If it is, we want to continue the filter on it, right?
Mhm.
I was going to add a little more though. There's a little more that this needs in order to work right. Text. Authentication. From my understanding of this is to ensure that there isn't already some sort of authentication in place. If some sort of authentication is already in place in JP in Spring Security, we do not want to do the below. If Spring Security somehow already has some sort of other authentication in its system, we want to not override it. All right. That was my understanding of what this is. Really haven't done much else with it. So that was just explaining like my understanding is just say, if there's already authentication here in the context, somehow maybe let's say this got double run somehow, we don't know for some reason, we don't want to do this again. Save the resources, save the system. I'm going to do a user detail. So now we're going to actually pull out the user details so we can actually get the information of who this person is. Now we need to identify who this person is and act in the system so that our system can recognize. Right now we only have the username. We don't actually have that user details for our system. So user details equals this dot JWT user details service. Now we can use the service. We have a username. So what does our details service have? What method does it have?
Load by username.
There we go. Last thing we also do is if the token is valid, we also want to have Spring Security manually set the authentication. So we're going to do if token util validate token Why is it not happy with that? Did we put that in? Oh, I don't think I included that actually. So let me skip this one. I think I decided to exclude that, didn't I? I did. Oh, I did a capital P. Check your JSON web token utility util method to make sure you have a small v there under validate token. I accidentally had a big V. I know some of you guys will just type whatever I type, so double check it for yourself because I did that on accident.
So where's the V? By accident?
Under JWT token util, I accidentally had a capital V under validate token.
Okay.
It should be small v. Some of you probably did it automatically because that's what it's supposed to be, but in case you did copy me one-to-one, double check it. Okay. I'm going to validate again, just make sure that the user detail that was pulled matches the JWT token. Why is it still upset with me? I need the brackets. Why is this so upset?
I was getting the same problem. Is it private? Oh,
I think I did make a private on accident. Hold
Yeah,
on.
it is private.
God dang it. Did I? Oh, I did. Let's be public. So that's another thing too. Yep, JSON, JWT, token util, public, validate token. I did a private before, so I just copied it. I did a couple privates here, so my bad. And then last thing we're doing here is just doing one final test to make sure that the JSON web token we have matches the user detail that we pulled from the user detail service. Because the JSON web token util and service are separate, there's a chance that maybe it grabs the wrong username. So we're just going to validate again that the token and user details are valid. And just doing a secondary check on it is we'll also double check for expiration as well in case it didn't get caught here. It can get caught again here as well. So just doing double checking here. With that, we're going to go ahead and do. What's my miss? So we're actually going to create a JSON, a web security token, and set this in the context. And I believe this is now that I'm seeing this again. Now that I'm seeing this, I think this is where it's going to connect back to this system. So we did this. This is actually going to create a authentication token in the web security context. So now we're adding that token to the context of our Spring server. So name, password, authentication token. I'm going to create one of these. Just take the default, even though it's long, you could, I guess, maybe acronym it to UPAT if you want, but UPAT, but we'll just use that because it's nice and fully just detailed what it is. That equal to. This gets really wordy. New name, password authentication token. User details, common null. So we already validated the credentials, so we don't need to provide the password. We already validated it, so it's fine. So we're going to do null and then user details dot get authorities. Again, that's built into the user detail system of Spring Security. Don't worry too much about what that is. Not important. This is one of those items we're just going to utilize without fully understanding. That's fine. Comment parentheses there was needed. That oh wait, I did 2 lines, so I do need to do that. There we go. I should do this too. So I like it on the same one. Yeah, there we go. Token. Set details. And these lines right here, you're probably just going to copy paste. Again, this is us also, again, kind of overriding the default behavior that Spring Security did with the web interface that you saw. Application details, source. Details. Request. So this is kind of related to, this is kind of what was built whenever they did the web login form when we first installed Spring Boot security. These are kind of the things that was happening in the background that you weren't, that was happening that you weren't default defining. Now we're overriding that default behavior with that web form with our JWT system. That's what this is doing right here.
I don't have a web authentication details source that I can put in. Oh, wait, hold on. There's new stuff populating in the list now. 1 second.
Oh, fun. Great. It's lagging. Not
Yeah,
just
that-
what we need.
That was really weird.
No kidding.
Authentication. Oh, there it is. Okay. It was yelling at me for a good minute before.
Jesus.
Uh,
Fun.
Yeah.
And last thing I'm gonna do now is actually set the security context holder with it. So that way, if another request comes in really quick, it might be fine. So security context holder, get context, set authentication, username, password, authentication token. And that's it. That's our filter. It's a bit, yeah, it's a bit there. You're giving out to reread this a couple times. Mostly what you need to understand is that this piece right here is is Spring Security. We only need this because Spring Security is a bit of a pain in the butt with stuff, with what it wants, what it needs, and how it handles its own situation. So just be aware of that. And that's why we set this up here, where it says if it's already done, don't do this again. Every single time we get a request, we are going to extract the username. We are going to pull it. It's fine. We're just going to understand, though, that Spring Security needs this system in order to authenticate correctly, like we saw in here. It needs this in order to be able to confirm that the username is fine, that the user's fine. All right.
Is it the protected void method? Is it do filter internal?
Do filter
Scroll up,
internal.
please.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I don't know why I thought it was an interval.
Oh, it is not an interval,
I-
unfortunately. No time.
I was like,
Internal.
I was like, what? That was throwing me off because it was giving me an error, and then I tracked it down to that, and I was like, oh, okay.
That'll do it.
Yep, that would definitely cause a problem. All right, and this probably was helping with that error because we weren't doing anything with the, we weren't creating any authentication tokens. Still don't know if this is gonna be enough because we do still need an authentication entry point, technically. It's small. Do we need that as well, technically? That might still give us the error. So, let's just see. I'm now curious to see what part of this is not validating that piece because I want to see what validates this authentication manager where you don't have to build an authentication manager. Because I don't build one. We technically have, I think, 2 more things left: a JWT, a entry point, a security config. That's it. So we have 2 more things to build before we again, the tutorial I followed actually lets me run a request. Let's see if this will let me run one. Yeah, that thing about the entry point sounds like it's required. Yeah, probably. Dang it. Still a little authentication manager, so. I hope this is the wrong. I didn't run into this earlier, but I hope I didn't miss something in my code. I'm gonna be really upset if I missed something. All right, let's build the web secure. Let's build our entry point. This is a small method, so don't be too concerned. This is a small one. The purpose of this one is to customize, rejects unauthenticated requests and send an error code. So if you try to attempt to access a secure route, it's going to say no. So, let's do.
You have to initiate roles on this?
What's that?
You have to initiate roles on this, or is we're just to use a default
What do you mean?
roles like administrator?
We'll get to that later. Yeah, that's going to come to like tomorrow, or do I think that's what you're doing that tomorrow?
Okay. Does it automatically does Spring
No.
automatically just make you default as user? Just as
Nope.
Oh.
Oh yeah, you're just an authenticated person. We haven't even
Oh.
gotten into that stuff yet, so don't worry about that yet.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if that was causing a problem or so, but I'm sorry.
That's Okay. Hold on a second. You might have a point. I might have pulled the one that doesn't do roles. My tutorial that doesn't do the roles. How's checking this out? Gotta keep going, unfortunately, because we're already at 8:07. I can't stop right now. But,
Let's just keep
uh,
going.
huh.
They're all
Yeah,
iron.
look at that, yeah. I might be, you just made me realize I might have pulled the old lesson that didn't include roles. I hope not. But we'll at least get this working because this is one authentication. So if your system doesn't require roles, you can use this. For those who require roles, I'll see if how much of this is the same, and we'll go from there. But dang it.
I
That
just
makes me
thought you
nervous.
needed roles to make this whole thing work. I didn't know if I had a default role
You
that.
might be right, but
generic.
I may have just accidentally pulled up the old tutorial because I had that ready and prepared to go anyway before I made the change and say, oh, we'll use the roles tutorial. Jeez. I'm a little concerned now. This might be an outdated one. That's why it feels so rusty to me. All right, so JWT authentication entry point. This is a component. Will those be components? Oh, yep. Dang it. Request filter. Request filter must be a component, by the way, that is grabbed by the system. Oh, I wonder if I missed other items. No, that one isn't a component. That's a REST controller. So that's fine. That's request origin. Yep, that's fine. Other items, I forget. This is a service, so it has what it needs. This is a component, good. Okay, so I don't think I forgot any others. Okay, good. So on your request filter, make sure to add component. I did forget that one line there. My bad.
Component. So all the utility packet, all the things on the utility packet should be components.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's my deciding factor why I put them all in the same package. That's I think that was the pattern that I decided on. So, all right. So point
Could this also be called components package as well? Because they're all components.
could, but yeah.
Yeah.
We
No,
originally called it because of the JSON Web Token util, and I didn't like creating a filter and entry point packages. So I just threw these in here. The tutorial I followed to build this system didn't actually do any packaging at all. It's really annoying. So I had to come up with my own packages, and
Yeah.
I'm familiar with a util package. And so I didn't really have anywhere that felt comfortable for me to put these, and these weren't services. And they felt more like utilities.
Yeah.
You 100% could create a filter and entry point utility packages if you wanted to. I'm trying to keep the packages being too big for you guys. So my deciding factor where to put these were, component.
Yeah.
This is the service. So I didn't feel like these belonged with the service, and they at least matched this. I was like, I can put them there.
And also like JWT, that could be though. Yeah. Yeah. Oh well. Anyways.
No, that we have the JDT there and JDT there. So JDT is not just there. So.
Hmm.
And you could end up adding other utilities here later.
True.
This is going to extend the. Oh, I'm in the wrong one. I went up one. This is not going to extend. It's going to implement. Okay. That's application entry point. Yeah, I wonder if that's where the manager comes into play. The authentication entry point might be a child of the manager class. I didn't check on that. Didn't say it right there. You can always look at it later if you want. All right.
Whee.
Yep. This one just has one simple item. Yeah, I say simple. Override, public, void, commence. Yeah, there's going to be a similar item. We have the request response starts. We have our HTTP servlet request, so request. And always keep in mind the order. You can't have a response without a request first. So always remember, that's how I can remember the order. You cannot have a response without a request. So request always goes first. Response. And instead of the chain though, because we're not actually part of the filter chain yet, we're actually part of the authentication, the entry point authentication process. This is going to be an authentication exception. This one can throw a IO exception, not an auth exception. I know you're thinking auth exception, but no. That authentication exception is not an actual authentication exception. It is a object that if it's full at all, if it has anything in it, if anything's set, it will then throw it at the end of the chain of the entry point process. So IO exception, again, not important to really understand it fully. And driving a car without fully understanding how it works. All we're going to do here is do a response dot send error. So the response dot sc unauthorized. That's all it says. And really what this is helping us also to do, why is it saying it's not good enough?
You forgot, there's one more, do a servlet exception on the throw.
Little my notes.
When I said, just implement it, it actually threw in a servlet exception also, as well as the IO exception.
Bring it in. Oh,
That was the only extra thing. It just threw that. It seems to be happy.
in my notes. All right. All
No, still got
Yep.
red. Still got red. I
I'm
don't like
still,
that.
I'm still upset.
Yeah.
What did I forget? That. Let's compare.
It throws what? It throws an
Oh, I
IO
brought in the
exception.
wrong. Oh, I brought in the wrong exception. I wanted to bring in this one. I brought in Java X naming, which is wrong. So let's bring in the right one.
Oh,
Wait, what?
Which one is it? The
authentication
Spring
exception.
Security Core. So I want to do Spring Security Core.
Oh,
This one. Now they're the same, so now I get rid of that, and now it's happy. Yep.
Security core. There it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Wait, I'm behind.
No worries. I'm holding.
Authorization exception. Which one did we? I don't see the difference.
Spring, the security.core. So spring framework.security.core.
Okay, I gotta hold on. Ah.
All good.
Still mad. Hold on.
I can have you share screen.
oh, there's up there. All right.
Oh, 1 second. I think I know where it is. Give me 1 second. I think I know where it is. I don't know where it is. Okay, share. Oh, I can't actually share.
All right, just try it. Just, you need to share screen.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
If it's not working, you gotta show me that.
Yes, I'm doing that right now. So here, right?
Yep.
And I wish you to go to the core one, right?
Yep.
That one.
Yes.
That's the one that I have. It's still mad. I'm gonna just do that to compare it real quick.
See,
I don't see the difference.
hold on. It's a little off because it's not the same. Hold on. Oh, you misspelled commence. Commence has two M's.
Dang it. I'm very off today, man.
You're fine. That's a common issue, unfortunately. Like those are, like, you have no idea how many times I have to look at someone else's code to just say you misspelled something. So do not be embarrassed by that. That is a very common error, and it's all the time. That's why it's the most important to share, because that's usually how people find it. Also, for the record, yeah, I pulled the wrong tutorial. This one does not do roles, and there's a good chance that the role one actually was simpler because it's a newer lesson, it's a newer tutorial. So that's fun. Rick. I'm gonna probably just still finish this one, but then I think tomorrow we'll switch over to this one just because I think it'll be easier.
Okay.
Unless you guys want to just stick with this one, it's up to you guys. But I know a lot of you guys have roles needed for your projects, so.
I'd like an easier one. So if
All
we
right,
could finish,
I'm gonna double check it to make sure it is easier.
Yeah.
I'm gonna double check to make sure. Like there is like what we're about to create right now, the web security config, that is needed. But and it still looks pretty the same. But yeah, I think some of the other stuff might be simpler, but we'll see. I'm gonna go through it and see what of this stuff is similar, what of this is different. I can't believe I pulled the wrong one.
A lot of it would
I feel bad.
think it's the same, but I would think a lot of it's the same because you're making a.
It is going to be similar, but I still think there's something like I do feel like they used a couple more shortcuts. Again, I'm going to double check it because it doesn't. I didn't notice it because I feel like there is some stuff that is similar. I do feel as like we do have the do filter internal, that's still there. So what we just did with the filter, that is something we had to do. We did have a utility class. So I feel like there's a lot of things that are similar, but I also feel like this one felt simpler for me based on the mapping that I had. So there was something that did feel a little off, but I couldn't find my mapping, a little picture that I had. Maybe we'll check quick. Here we go. So we have the authentication entry point, which is what we just built. Yep. We have a configuration adapter, which we're going to build. Username path with authentication token. We just did that. So not the user details, a user detail service. We don't have a user detail service, but we have we have a user detail service. We haven't built an authentication manager yet. This one shows it did, and that's probably why I'm having issues. Password encoder, which we haven't done yet. A once per request filter, which we do have. But I don't have a service or a util. Again, I'll take a look at it. It actually might be fairly similar, but in order for the roles, I'll have to see. So I'll double check it again, but we might still stick with this. So let's keep going with where we are. And I'll take a look and maybe see how I can connect this to it and see if there's anything simpler that we can also simplify out of this as well. But I did follow the wrong one, which is my mistake. I do apologize for that. Hey, at least be impressed that I had 2 different tutorials for the same exact thing. Now this one's the fun one, unfortunately, and you know I say that with sarcasm.
I'm having an error on the request filter.
Share your screen. We'll just go from that.
Damn, I can't move. Hold on. Here. I don't know what's happening here.
It doesn't like the override. So it's saying that what you wrote doesn't override.
Yeah, it says it does not override. Yeah. But it's giving me an error since the beginning on this.
Hold on. Yeah. Hold on. Scroll over, hover over it. We want to take a look at the what you wrote because I feel like you're missing the chain. Yeah, you're missing the filter chain. So after your response, put comma.
Oh, sorry, where?
On line 29.
29.
After response, yep. Comma. Do filter chain, capital F filter chain. Comma, space chain. You import filter chain. Oh, there it goes.
Oh, there you go. All right,
Yep.
thank you.
Yeah, you would just, your signature was a little off. So. Good.
You can just click on that and then implement it just to compare it, compare what the computer
Yeah.
put out to what you have.
So next item, this did have a different at, so we're actually going to do a different package, just so the ats are all, the annotations for each package is the same. So we're going to do a, not that, new package. Configuration. So I'm going to do a web security. All right, I'm gonna do at configuration. At enable, and I don't think, am I sharing the screen? Yes, I am. Okay, good. I didn't see the green border. I was like, wait a minute. Enable web security and at enable global method security pre-post enabled true. So before the post actually occurs, we want to test it. It's going to extend the web. Okay. Extends. Oh, I did extend, not extends. Web security configurer adapter. Hold on for a second there. Some of this I am going to copy paste into the method because again, there's nothing really special about it. It's just standard items we need to add. So we might just copy paste some of this because it really is just, you don't need to understand it fully. But you might still go through it just because it's interesting to at least be aware, at least hear about it. Whether or not you fully understand it, it's not too important, but enough that you can come in later and adjust if you need to. Things we need for this, wired, are JWT, private, JWT, entry point, wired, private, detail service. All right, yeah, no. Detail service, yeah. Details. And with that, our JSON web token, JSON user detail service is a extension of it, I believe. Oh no, wait. We don't have one of that. So yeah, user detail service. We doesn't do that. Private. Request filter. So that's everything in that as well. And again, the auto wire again. Pretty much you want to auto wire anything that is a component as well. So. And then this one, no way for you to know this, but so just follow along with the, again, this is just me following along with the documentation, along with the tutorial. So auto wired. First, I'm going to see a method that is auto wired. So figure global, this is going to get triggered by the auto wire due to this annotation. So it's going to look for this method. Authentication manager builder. There we go. This is where it comes into play. Now I remember. So we're gonna, instead of us defining an authentication manager, we're going to build one using this configuration tool. This can throw. And the main thing is that we need to tell it where to look for our credentials. So it'll load the user for matching credentials. We are going to end up using the bcrypt password encoder at some point, but I do not believe we actually used the bcrypt password encoder for the password we put in there. Now I remember why we had that fancy, I had that fancy string in there. But we're going to do bcrypt later. Yeah. Service. I'll create a method for that because yeah, we probably are not going to actually do a encoding. Yeah, I'm going to create a method for it because we're not going to actually use. Oh no, because we don't have any other encoder. Should have tested this before I did that because I didn't want you guys to have to copy and paste that really long, annoying string. So I don't know if anyone remembered that. So if we go back to my notes and scroll back up. In this user detail service, I had this there before. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got rid of it because I didn't want you guys having to type it. So one thing to remember with decrypt stuff is that if you, when you hash passwords, if you use the same secret, if you use the same encryption tools and all that, the item will get encrypted the same way. That's why people, when you use the word password as your password, that can be hacked pretty easily because everyone in the same, if everyone who uses the word password for their password, the encrypted key is the same. So that's the way that it's able to convert it. When you take a string and you put it through bcrypt, you'll get the same output when you put the same word through. That. So yeah, when you put the same word through an encryption system, through a bcrypt, you'll get the same output. That's how you're able to compare if a password is the right password, because when that password gets encrypted, it'll then match the stored encrypted password. You can't decrypt the password. You can't undo it. So I can't turn this back into what it was. I could do it brute force by just testing a bunch of things and seeing if it comes out the same. Because once you find what this is, all the other string of passwords that have this exact string have the same password. So that's how those things work. So this is a known password through the bcrypt system. That's why we're able to put it in there.
But you gotta
And you really want to you really want to encrypt your passwords.
isn't that
Ahead,
just an
Jim?
algorithm that if you just pass that back through the algorithm again, you should come
No,
back? No, it doesn't.
decrypt is not undoable. That's one thing to remember. It's not undoable. It's similar to the SHA-256 or something like that. Multiple passwords can have the same, well, not really, because again, you're looking at like almost the same, the amount of cards, amount of stars in a universe. So the amount of time it would take you to actually brute force something like this is insane. What a lot of systems will do is they'll just run passwords, the common passwords through a bcryptor and then just search the database for those in keys. So what most people are doing, they're not undoing these. What they're doing is they're hashing passwords to see if that password matches something that's in there. So again, we already know the most commonly used password in the world is still password 1234556. No matter how many times the articles come out with that and say it, it's still to this date those are the most commonly used passwords. It's really annoying. And so all hackers need to do when they get a list of encrypted passwords, they just send through those most commonly used passwords through multiple different hashing algorithms until they find one that works, until they find that encrypted word that matches one in the database. Once they find it, then they know, well, this is the encryption tool that was used to encrypt these passwords. Now we just got to try a bunch of passwords to see if this was their password. But yeah, you can't undo this. I can't take a SHA-256 keep a phrase and put it through and get back the original text. There's no undoing those. So just be aware of that. So that's why it's important to store your passwords in the database encrypted, because if someone gets it, they at least can't undo them. They can definitely try to figure out what they are, but they can't undo them. If that makes sense. All right. So I want you guys using bcrypt 100%. So if everyone can actually just throw this into your JSON, your JWT user detail service, we definitely want bcrypt. And I did test to see how to set up my configuration here to not use it. So I could test not applying this and just not including this, but I don't know if it'll work then, because I didn't test it, because I do not like not using encryption for passwords. So I'm going to
Make
paste
sure to
that
pull out
under.
that new line token that comes, or new line character that comes in with it from
Oh, yeah.
from
If you get it,
Zoom.
yeah. Dang it, Zoom! Don't do that. I didn't say new line.
Replace the word password for that.
Yes.
long ass- Okay.
Yep, that is a bcrypt encrypted password.
Where's where we put that again?
JWT user detail service.
Okay.
Does it have a new line at the end too? I don't know why I added it in mine.
Oh, there's it.
What was
Why
that?
why did mine add a dash n at the end of it? I didn't do that. What?
That's the new line character he was mentioning.
Okay.
Yep. Get rid of that. That's something that Zoom added.
Okay. All right. Every password I set from now on has to be a minimum that level of security right there.
It should be, yeah. Well, no, that's not actually the password. That's a hashed version of the password. If I go back
Oh,
down to
you know that
notes.
could be one letter.
The password, that is actually the encrypted password for password.
There you go.
That actually means password.
Yeah.
So,
You're surprised at like some of the ones that these put out for like one letter. You're like, whoa, it's just like huge.
yep.
You would
Yeah, if
never
we change
know
this, yeah,
one letter.
100%. You change one letter and this thing is completely different. It's really cool how the encryption system works. So you can't look for similarities. If the two strings are similar, it doesn't mean the password is actually similar at all. They could be phenomenally different. And this also doesn't hint as to how long the password is at all. It doesn't hint at how long the password is or how short the password is, nothing.
Exactly.
It's kind of the cool thing about it. Now, mathematically, yes, it is possible that two people could have the same encrypted password with different strings of text. Mathematically, yes, but the odds of that are astronomical. So don't worry about it so much. And it doesn't really matter for our use cases. It just technically means that someone could be logged in with two different passwords. But again, the odds of that happening are, again, there's more stars in the universe than the odds of that happening.
It just
So-
makes me wonder about these things like this, if you ever run out or like run out of IP addresses or, you know, like run out like finite things.
Again, that has to do with just how many instances there are, and just look up permutation algorithms. This has, you can see here that we use all the alphabet characters, both small and large. That's 26 plus 26. We use all the numbers. That's another 10 characters plus several symbols. So we have the dollar symbols there as well. Now, I think the dollar symbols are actually code, so I think those are in there no matter what. But even then, you then count how many characters that is, and then just do that. It's like multiplication. So 26 times 26 times times 10 times how many positions there are. And I don't even know if that includes repetition or not. So, meaning you can use in every one of these spots, you can use all of those characters, and none of them are like unusable again. So the number gets massive.
I know, it just seems like it's it seems like you, I don't know, it just seems like you run out. Considering that how many people are on the planet, consider that if everybody person had one account, but say if I had 100 accounts.
I thought that with PGP encryption, but when I looked up the details, you could have a million, like every single human on this planet could have a supercomputer that is running these computations to figure this out every millisecond, and it would still take a million a year, like millions of years to run it.
Wow.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. Feel free to look it up.
Yeah, I believe
Feel
you.
free to look it up.
Interesting. Anyways,
it is a fascinating little bit of mathematical information for seeing how secure this stuff is.
Hmm.
Yeah, everyone got this in there now? Give enough time? All right, back to the config. I'm gonna create a quick little, no, that's the first method there, just telling it to use the password encoder. We're also gonna set up the password encoder now in case you ever wanna change to something other than bcrypt. Public. Encoder. Do return new bcrypt password encoder. So luckily for us, Spring Security actually includes a copy of bcrypt, which is the most common password encryptor out there. So again, those of you who were with me for Node and Express, probably remember that we use bcrypt in JavaScript as well. So
Yeah, I used bcrypt before. I
it
think I
is
had,
the most popular out there.
I think I had to bring that in as a dependency when I first started Spring Boot.
Jesus. Nope, not anymore.
Yeah,
Other than that,
I have that in.
also, again, don't ask for details, but we just want to make sure we identify, these are items that are not going to be auto-identified, so we have to actually add the bean tags to these.
Is there a reason that we did a new method for that instead of just putting the new bcrypt password encoder inside the password encoder on line
To be
32?
entirely honest, I'm not fully confident in it, but my understanding was because it needs to be a bean, it should be separate. And at
Okay.
the same time, this allows us to easily switch what one we want to use by just coming here. If we want to use a different encoder, we can just come here to change it instead of in here. And this is that way we initialize it here and send it back. Part of me had to believe it was part of the fact that it was part of a bean. And this is mostly just following the documentation for Spring Security. So they don't always explain exactly why you need these items. They just put it there as like, this is the way to do it.
You can
Have
always
another
put
bean.
You can always put that in there and then just watch the errors fly out and then you can just see.
Right, yeah, see if it requires it separate. That's true.
Oh, yeah, that would that'd make me
It's
feel
always
right
a
at
good
home
thing
with
to
the rest
look
of
at,
this
though.
stuff.
It's always an interesting thing to know why, like it might give you some insight of why. And it's always a good thing.
All right, now we're gonna make our authentication manager. So this is actually gonna return our authentication manager. This is a bean. Authentication manager bean method. So the authentication manager is a bean, and so we need to make sure we build it. This can throw an exception again as well.
Oh,
And a lot of this was really just me just typing along with what was in the documentation. So not really much I can give them back, and not really much you need to understand. Just know that these things are required and try to understand as best you can. So super authentication manager bean. The override needed. And this is the one that's going to be a little, that's like, this is the annoying one. Figure. HTTP security. That didn't work because I did the double shift, I think. Okay. Exception again. All right. And so very straightforward. Explain this again. First things first, there's a type of security system we don't need. And I don't know what this is. So it's something called CSRF. Does anyone actually know what that is?
ESRF.
Yep. Just curious if anyone actually knows it already.
No.
So cross-site request forgery is an attack that forces an end user to execute unwanted actions on a web application in which they are currently authenticated. So it's someone that is authenticated and they're trying to execute unwanted actions. So if the victim is an administrative account, CSRF can compromise the entire web application. So it is something we would want to do within like a high security system, something you can look into, but for the moment, we're going to disable it because it makes things very annoying and require more effort to configure. So what we're going to do here is we're going to HTTP security dot CSRF dot disable. Yeah. Also, do not want to authenticate this request. So certain paths, this route, authorize requests, ant matchers. So anti-matchers are anti-match. So don't authenticate this one. So these ones like anti-matcher. So we do not want to do API/authenticate. Put that one. That is, we go back to our JWC authentication controller. That is this guy right here. Any requests to this route, we do not want to authenticate. We want that one to flow through no matter without any authentication, right?
Mm-hmm.
So any routes you want to put in, you can put them in here.
When you're talking about this CSRF, is this talking about like people would go into like routes that they couldn't like supposed to access and they could just
Well, kind of again. So the thing here is that it's an attack that forces actions on an already authenticated user. So let's say you log in and someone has a virus on your system that realizes you're logged in and starts pushing out requests as you.
Oh, okay.
So that means you would need to have other security systems in place, and it's just not within the scope of the tutorial today. I don't want to get into that today. So we're just going to disable it for the moment. If you guys want to add that security, go ahead. But I'm trying to minimize how many insane security systems we're already putting at you. I've already think I put a decent amount at you guys in just the last 2 days. So I think Matt has made that very clear. So, and I'm sure he's speaking on behalf of several others. So thank you for that, Keith. So yeah, I am very much aware that we're going to, honestly, I'm actually kind of okay with the fact that I goofed this up with the role, because I think it actually might benefit us to do a second version of this, seeing the similar things, seeing something again, just another way of doing another route, another time.
I think even if you didn't,
So,
we would have had to go through another one.
Yeah,
because
I think it's going to benefit us.
there's a lot here.
Yeah. So next one,
Remember
all
when
other
security was
requests.
just having private as an access modifier.
What was that again?
I remember when security was just a private access modifier.
Jesus.
I remember what a pain that was to get around.
All requests need to be authenticated. That's what this then, this next line does this. Any request? Ooh, what did I forget? It's not a dot notation. What did I forget? Like syntax here. Oh, right. That dot permit all. Forgot about that. I'm going to do dot any request. So yeah, on this route, we want to permit all. And so it's not actually antimatter, it's pattern match. And then what is ant match? I knew what ant matchers stand for, and I for some reason thought it was anti-matchers. It's not. I forgot what ant matcher stands for. Ant patterns. I'll have to look that into that again. I forgot it and I didn't make a note of it because it wasn't actually that important. It's just a way to match route patterns. So anyway. So any request now, authenticated, and that's it. And I'm gonna add on one more thing, I think. Make sure. I'm putting these in there for you guys because I added these for myself as well. You want to use stateless session, because we're not going to be using the user state or anything like that. We're not going to be using sessions. So sessions will be used to store the user state. We're not using sessions. Exception handling. Authentication entry point. That's that JWT authentication entry point we had.
Could you go back to that method for a second, please?
I'm sorry. I'm just, something about my code here is bothering me because I feel like I have an error in my notes.
Go on Zoom. Authentication entry point. And that is JWT authentication. Okay.
Hold on, I'm having a problem with my notes because my notes I have JWT user detail service, but I have user detail service here. But we have a JWT user detail service. I'm trying to remind myself, I actually do want this, and I wrote that down wrong in my notes. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we actually want that. So you know what? Hold on. Refactor. So refactor the user detail service on line 27. Rename to JWT user. I'm also going to refactor type migration to
Rename it to G.
JWT user detail service.
Oh, okay.
Everyone can do that. I'm pretty sure I have a typo in my notes.
Cannot perform refactoring.
Refactoring?
Line 27, I had it as user detail service and user detail service, but in my notes, I had it as user detail service like this with JWT user detail service.
Yep.
And so I'm pretty sure this was meant to be JWT user detail service in my notes, and I just had a misspell in my notes.
How do you refactor one of those?
So for this one, we use refactor rename.
Right.
For
What's
this,
how
we
you
do
that one?
refactor type migration.
Type migration. Okay.
Delete everything that's there and just type in the JWT user detail service, and you should see it in the pop-down menu.
Refactor type migration. Hold on.
So we're changing the type. We're migrating the type to the JSON
Oh, there it
JWT
is.
request.
Refactor type
And
migration.
we're changing it to
So refactor type migration.
And we change it to what?
Delete everything in there and just start typing JWT, not request filter. Whoops, I'm gonna do that again. JWT user detail service. Refactor.
Aha.
UT user detail service.
Yeah.
And then
I'm pretty confident that's what we wanted. My notes, unfortunately, I typed out user detail service here. So I forgot, I didn't put the JWT here, but my variable name was JWT user detail service. My variable name didn't match the data type. And so I'm pretty confident I messed up the data type.
so type
Unless
migration.
AutoWire is fixing it. I don't know.
So type migration, I deleted everything there. Now it's just JWT user detail service.
Yep.
That's it. Because
Yep.
there was a comma and a bunch of stuff in there. That
Don't worry about it. It'll import it correctly.
okay, all right. So
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm doing this right.
Yep.
Okay.
As long as you grab it from the drop-down menu, it's fine. It'll import it correctly.
I think it did.
And do we have any issues?
Just gonna
Why
finish
is
what
this? Hold on. And double check you guys here because I did mine wrong. Oh wait, I remember what I did wrong on that. It's because I switched this one to be the filter, and so then when I switched this one, they switched that one as well. I don't think yours did that. Yours guys should be fine.
It's weird. Your type migration's in a different spot in the drop-down menu because you're on Mac
Wait.
than it is on Windows, and that
Really?
freaked me out for a minute. Yeah, yours is
Weird.
way up high, and mine's buried somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, it's buried
So-
down a little below.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
have-
interesting.
Oh god.
So to clarify for everybody, your first item auto wire should be the JWT authentication entry point. Second one should be the JWT user detail service, and the third one should be the JWT request filter.
So I fell behind on the second one. I have user detail service. Do I have to also do a type migration for that one?
That's the
Or-
one you should be type migrating. You shouldn't. That's the only one you should be type migrating. Which one did you type migrate?
The one underneath the JWT request
Undo.
filter. Undo. Okay. Oh god. So okay. Oh, I see.
Mhm. Yeah, like I said, so my notes show user detail service and JWT user detail service. I feel like I maybe copied it wrong. But at the same time, now I'm concerned maybe the auto wired would convert the JSON detail services and map it correctly, but I don't really think it will. Main thing is remember that JWT user detail services implements user detail services. So technically is the same thing. So it implements it. So should be fine. But I'm just thinking I wrote that down wrong in my notes, so I'm fixing it here. If it errors, we'll bring it back, but I'm pretty sure because of my variable name, that's what this was supposed to be.
And then you just gotta go to the bottom to finish that one part.
Yep, we're going back here. We still have a little more to add here, so a little bit more to add.
It started.
What's that?
It worked. Mine works.
Okay, but I'm not done yet.
I know, but mine loaded though. I still haven't finished the line though. I don't understand why it would. Oh, because I put a
Management.
I put a semicolon after at the end of that and it worked.
Ah.
So the server works. I mean, your
Yeah.
code works at this point.
Good. Well, yeah, we finally built the application manager now.
Hmm.
And last thing, the session policy. Unfortunately, your thing's going to require sessions. Session. We can use stateless. And we are not actually using sessions. So that's our configuration here. So again, to confirm, our HTTP security configuration is for CSRF, we're going to disable that. So that's one thing that happens. So again, this is an object that exists. It's the HTTP security object. And then on that object, we're editing some of the default behaviors. We're setting those default behaviors. So we're going to disable the CSRF protections because we don't want to have to define that. That is more work we have to do, and I don't think any of you want to go through defining CSRF. This is already enough as it is. After we disable that, we're then going to set up an authorized requests on these matches here. So now we're going to go into authorized requests. That's the next thing we get into. On the API authenticate route, we're going to match this route. We want to permit all. Jesus Christ, stop with the dragon. I could do ands, and this might also accept a list potentially, but look into that. See if this has a list override, or otherwise you could always do .and matchers, authenticate, or just continue and more. After that, we then do on any request, we want to authenticate and with the so again, these ands are just adding on additional configurations. That's all this is doing, is taking the result of this, saying, hey, more settings. So, and now we're going to do the exception handling setting. The entry point is going to be the JSON, the JWT authentication entry point that we created. And our session management is going to be the policy of stateless. We don't want to use sessions. After that, though, unfortunately, we can't use the and, so I'm going to do one more configuration setting. Add filter before. And so this is where we add those filters now. So we can put in that filter. So JWT request filter. And we need that. So we need one of these. So we got our filter and then the standard filter. And that's our configuration system. That allows us to override the default behavior of popping up a pop-up window and asking for a username and password. Oh boy.
Oh boy is right.
Let's actually run this for a second.
It does run. It doesn't crash now, which is
Good.
cool.
I told you it would run,
Yeah.
except for.
But again, I want to make sure everyone's runs, not just yours.
No,
'Cause
Of course.
there's a lot to type and a lot to mess up.
as
So
long as it ran.
I think a lot's an
Yeah.
understatement.
I was so close. Hold on. Mine might be something simple. This is just one error.
take a look. While you check, I'm also gonna see if I can actually send the authentication route and get a token back quick.
Authentication failed to
That's-
start.
I think I didn't check.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do localhost. First off, actually. Well, no, I can't do that because that's still gonna, well, it's gonna get denied. I don't think I'll get the login screen though. No. Yeah, see, no error screen, no login screen anymore. So we did override that behavior. We are no longer gonna get that login screen.
Mm.
/API/developers, that is no longer accessible now. So here, we're gonna do is gonna go to here, we're gonna actually get rid of this token. So if you added that token, get rid of it, by the way. No, actually, I'm just gonna create a new item. So new tab, don't save. So it's nice and clean. Host, and 8080 if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
I'm just double checking. Like, oh, what else did I change? Did it authenticate? Authenticate, yep. Did I spell it wrong? I did. And let me actually just go copy and paste it from the controller. Last thing I need is it not working because of a misspell. Good, okay, I got it. Authenticate. And our body, we're gonna do a JSON object. User name, will be Java in use, if you remember correctly.
Mhm.
That was the item we had in our user detail service. So Java in use. So you can copy that if you wanted. Make sure you got it right. And as I said, that funky string we had is the bcrypt encryption for password. So our username and password is password. Let's hit send and watch the crash happen.
Nope.
Close. Not right though. Not quite.
What's your application say?
JWT token does not begin with bearer string, but it shouldn't have. Because that shouldn't have, I shouldn't need to be authenticated. Because it shouldn't be applying the authentication.
Okay, it's not an error. I mean, it's an error, but it's nothing like a red thing.
Right, but it's saying like it's not checking this. It's not allowing that to go through
Mm.
like it should. You know what? Let's make this simple. Get rid of the API, just do flash authenticate over here under the controller. We're just going to do authenticate. Keep it simple. Drop the API. Make sure the route is nice and simple. So authenticate, send, method not allowed because it's supposed to be post. My bad. But at least we're no longer getting not authorized. So now it does seem to be matching the route now. So it does seem to be matching the path. So we'll switch to post now. It should have been. Send again. Hey, I got a token. So now let's test something else. Copy this. I'm going to do a new tab. I'm going to do authorization, bearer token, and paste that in. Let's head over to here and do localhost 8080 API/developers. Let's get all developers. And let's hit send.
Unauthorized.
Unauthorized. Great. And it crashed.
Aha!
Damn it.
Crashing a bunch of
Signed
places.
claim JWSs are
No
not.
claims JWSs. What? Signed claims JWSs are not supported.
What's
I,
JWSs?
I'm actually not sure. What? I have not seen that message before.
IO JSON Web Token, unsupported JWT exception.
Wait, Are these should be JWSs? JWT with signature.
You still got errors up here saying JW token does not begin with the bearer string.
Yeah, that's from before.
Oh, that one? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
those are
did
the
you run
original.
it?
Those are the original requests we tried in.
But this is isn't this a new run because you changed it?
Where do you see it though? Hold on.
If you scroll up a little bit,
Scroll up a little bit.
right
more?
there on, yeah, that second to last line.
And the request filter, inside the request filter.
Oh, remember I did the, I remember
Yeah.
when I first started, I did a get request on the authorization first on authenticate,
Right.
and that was not matching. I don't know why I still did the JWT token though. Not sure on that yet. We'll check it again in a second, but I didn't use JWS, I used JWTs. So this name parse claims JWS. Before you guys change it, I'm gonna try this quick. Signature. Oh, hello. Signs of instructor JWT using the specified algorithm, the specified key using a JWS. My notes didn't. I used JWT. Confusing. Let me test it, make sure that works. If that does, then you guys will just switch it over to JWS. JSON Web signed, I guess. I don't know.
Oh,
That's new. But let's find out. Yep. Okay. So on your JSON JWT token util, under the get all claims for tokens, do parse claims JWS for signed tokens. If we didn't sign it, which you want to sign it because then you encrypt it with the secret key in that algorithm, so that's actually encrypted correctly.
where
Where is that exactly?
JSON web JWT token util.
Mhm.
Mine is line 43.
Oh, so
Get
it's
all
in
claims
the
from token.
get
Oh.
all claims from token.
And parse claims JWS instead of JWT. Because apparently
the only-
ours, yeah, that's the only
That's
change.
the only change? Oh,
Yep.
fantastic.
One change right here. Line 43 under the JSON JWT token util.
Oh,
Parse claims JWS instead of parse claims JWT.
Okay, there you go. All right.
So it was signed JSON web token. And apparently at some point they must have added that in. I don't know. It worked.
There we go.
I'll have to check my notes again. Yeah, apparently I'm thinking I made a couple mistypes because I probably just added more misspellings to my code, my notes. Because I did the same thing with the web security config. So Sergio, don't feel so bad about your mistypes because I apparently added some to my notes.
It happens.
Honestly, there's a good chance though that actually my notes might even say JWS and I just saw JWT and it made sense because JWT. But I have to scroll up to look and see if I did that.
But it works.
Yep, that's what matters.
Mm-hmm.
So hold on a second now. Let's see something quick. We didn't connect this though to our database. So what I'm thinking what we're gonna do though, I'm thinking we're gonna kind of go through this stuff before we start trying to hook this up to our database. So I think I'm gonna go through this one more time, Tuesday and Thursday. And when we connect to the database, we'll actually go ahead and use users and roles so you really see what we want to see. So we're going to go through this a second time, Tuesday and Thursday, using my other tutorial. And so we're probably going to reboot this thing. So I'm probably going to undo my code by going back to a previous branch we had or a previous commit and start from there. Probably. Yeah, might do that. Or I might just download my code from that previous branch as well. And if I do that, I'll let you know walk you guys through how to do that. So you'll see how we do that. So we can pull that code down. We have a separate repo for that. So you'll have this version and that version. Because I do still want to commit this. So you have this, you can review it. So I'm not going to say adding it to your projects, to your Expressian app yet. For now, continue working on your personal projects. Keep working on those. I want to see more progress on that more. I think what it'll be is it'll be a weekend thing to add this to your Expressian app. I think that might be a better attempt on that. So, sound good? Because I don't really want to figure. I don't really feel like adding that. We haven't really done anything to add users yet or anything like that. So let's deal with that Tuesday and Thursday. So we'll go through the whole kind of setup process again, see We'll try to clarify some more things. You can ask more follow-up questions. So make sure you watch these videos, or at least if you don't watch the videos, just go through the code we added. Look at the code we added. Look at things that you're unsure about, unclear about. When we go through it the second time, feel free to ask more questions the second time through. Sound good?
Yeah.
I am willing to do that on this item because authentication is a nightmare item to deal with. But it is also one of the most important things you can do for a website. If you do not have valid authentication, your website is not dynamic. Your website is not user facing. In almost, again, 90% of the sites you use, 95% of the sites you use have authentication in them. So it is something you desperately need to know and desperately need to understand, or at least desperately need to be able to at least configure. Do you need to fully understand how it works? Not at all. Do you at least need to know how to configure it and for your site? Yes. So that's what we're going to do again. So we're going to do this one more time, Tuesday and Thursday from scratch, so you guys really can feel a little better about it. What I will say as we go through it the second time, I will say that you're going to want to start adding these pieces to your Expressian app, starting Tuesday into Thursday, and then Thursday into Monday. So we'll start adding this in on the second time through. That way, if you guys do run into any problems with the Expressian app, you can ask me on Thursday. Sound good?
Mhm.
All right. So I think that makes me feel a little more confident. So actually, yeah, I've been watching you guys as I've been going through this. I've seen the looks of confusion on those with the camera on. So I am very much aware that this is, yeah, and I knew we had to cover authentication. I couldn't keep doing what we did before with the previous cohorts, having you guys try to find your own authentication systems and try to figure out how to use it right. It's had very mixed results, and some people could figure out at least something functional within a week. Some people took a month to find something. So I knew we had to cover something, because if I can get you guys to get an authentication system in your Expressian app in 1 week, I've succeeded. I will feel happy if I can get you guys to put an authentication system in the Expressian app by Monday. I will be happy. I save time. All right.
I'd rather have like a template that I can work with, just because
Yeah.
the more I use that template, the more I start delving into like, okay, why is these working? Why am I doing this? And it it starts getting into my brain how it actually operates.
And if all of you are using the same authentication system, you're more likely to be able to help each other too. If I just kind of set you off to find authentication systems for your sites, you're all going to find different ways of doing it, and then you won't be able to assist each other. Since you're all going to be introduced to the same kind of JSON web token process, you're going to be able to help each other. If someone gets stuck or someone gets an error message, you'll be able to at least compare and contrast and help each other out when figuring out why it's not working. And so that was there were several reasons why I wanted to make sure we did an authentication tutorial, and why I wanted to spend more time on this than I do on even React. So I wanted to spend more time on authentication than we're even going to spend on React personally. So sound good?
So when we're going to do the
I'll just
React
say,
authentication front end,
What was that?
we're going to do some React front end authentication.
It's probably going to be like the last 3 days before you go on break, probably. Looking at the calendar.
But most of the authentication is the back end. All we have to do is just make the calls to the front end too.
Yep. Looking at the calendar. So authentication on the 7th, authentication on the 9th. We're probably going to do external APIs for 13th and 15th. And then I guess, probably 16th, 20th, and 22nd. 21st will be React. And then you guys will be on break from 23rd, 27th, 28th, 30th, and then we'll be back on the 3rd. All right. And so you guys will be able to start working on your projects. And again, I want to do React 16th, 20th, 21st, so that you actually can do some basic React with your project for the break. So once you guys have a good amount of your project worked on over the break, I don't want everyone to be like, well, I finished the API and I don't know how to do the front end yet, so I'm not going to do anything. And at the same time, I also don't want you guys trying to dig into React on your own and find something complex, because React can be complex because there's older React that still uses, because there is still React tutorial out there that still use something known as Redux, and that can be a nightmare if you accidentally get into Redux, if you don't learn about hooks and state and stuff like that.
And classes.
Yeah, if we don't want to get, on one hand, I can understand why using classes in React can be tempting, because we know classes in Java, but classes in React are more complex. So while they sound like what you want because you guys are class-based developers now, they're going to make your time a little more difficult. So we're going to try to avoid that.
I found
Alright.
Mhm.
class-based a lot easier to learn in React
Right.
than
I can see that.
when it first came out. I was like clueless, but then when I saw the class-based, I'm like,
Yeah.
I understand it's a lot better. But now I'm doing the
Yeah.
hooks, and I'm like, yeah, the hooks are a little bit better.
Right.
I'm liking
Well, the
how-
first time you learned, they didn't have hooks, and function-based React sucked.
yeah,
And that's why they needed stuff like Redux and stuff,
yeah,
because it was designed around being object-oriented, which JavaScript is not an object-oriented language, but React developers were object-oriented developers. So you ended up with a object-oriented framework in a non-object-oriented language, which made it difficult to use. Since they switched to using hooks, it made React more of a functional system, which is more in line with what JavaScript is and makes it easier to learn, understand, and use. So yes, trying to understand React before hooks as a functional language, as an object-oriented programmer, was a nightmare. So you were very much incentivized to go and do the objects of React.
yeah.
Now, React hooks and functional is much easier to understand. It can allow you to write something with very little understanding of the whole process. So it'll make more sense as we get into it, and we will dig into that as soon as we can. But yeah, I definitely know that tomorrow and Thursday, we're going to be doing exactly what we did the last 2 days. 13th, 14th, at least, if not just on the 13th. It depends on how complex it is getting into, how difficult it is to get you guys to understand how do we pull data from an external source. I'm reserving 2 days for us, but it really, again, all we're doing is just making a call to an external site and allowing us to use that data. It is something that can possibly be done in a single day, but I don't want to force you guys to do it. If you guys need the extra day, I want to have it. So I'm giving us 13th and 14th to do external API consumption, but it definitely is possible for us to do it in a single day, with the 14th, 16th, 20th, and 21st being React. And then you guys are on break. When you come back, it's finishing up your projects, finalizing them, and doing algorithm prep and resume prep. So like I said, one of the other assignments you'll have over the break is to start building your resume. And my goal is on January, when you come back, is to start that process based on what your projects look like and see how accelerated you are. So the more of your project you have done over the break, the more accelerated your application process will be. That makes sense?
Mm.
The last thing also we're doing as we get back is running OpenShift. I almost forgot about that. So the first thing we do actually when we get back is OpenShift. We're going to be putting your projects that you built online and hosting them on the web. So that's actually the first thing we do when we get back, which I actually think OpenShift might be easier compared to what we just did the last couple of days. Just to make you guys feel a little better, OpenShift is really just hook this up, point it to your GitHub after you build a project, and then it does a bunch of stuff for you. And then puts it up. And there's just a couple configuration settings you need to understand to set up, and you'll have a site running, which is really nice actually when I did it my first time. I was surprised at how complex it looked, but how easily I can use it at the same time. So I think you guys will enjoy it. It won't be too difficult. That probably will be about a week or so. It'll be about a week, and then you guys will have hosted sites. Then yeah, you just get into your resumes, into algorithm practice and testing, and interview questions. So, any other questions? It's already at 10 o'clock. Damn, we didn't go another hour extra. So I appreciate everyone for sticking around.
Cliff, do you have a few minutes after class?
Of course.
Yeah, just a few things when everyone leaves.
Sure. Anybody else?
I want to go for another hour.
Have fun.
I still gotta
I'll
get
talk
up.
to you.
Still gotta get up out of the house at quarter six in the morning, 20 past. So I don't really care. Let's just keep
Get out of
going.
here, everybody. You guys are good. I free you all.
Free the recorder too.
Bye, y'all.
Oh, right.